Greetings, Ani, Bojo, Kwe. My name is Kathryn Gorman-Lovelady, and I live in tiny Ontario near Georgian Bay. I am an Algonquin Mohawk artist. Focus on that little beaded decal on my shoulder. So the first image I thought I would include is a very special piece I was honored to create for the Quilt of Belonging, and it represents Métis culture, art, and history, and the coureur de bois and all the trade goods. This next piece, it's a blanket quilt that was created as a shawl, but this particular piece represents cultural West Coast shawl with button work. I love our traditional Indigenous beadwork. A lot of my life has been spent trying to give back the cultural, educational, spiritual teachings to our people who are disenfranchised. And this particular beaded snake, like an Ouroboros, is about taking back our medicine. Snake is about coming full circle, and its medicine is teaching and wholeness. My grandmother was Algonquin. It's a traditional shawl as an homage to her. And I have traditional tobacco tin cornets on here. And what's holding the cornets on are the vertebrae of fish, blue jay feathers. And it speaks to her holding on to the traditions of an Algonquin elder. This is a particular medicine blanket for a couple who approached me, who, in taking back the traditions, wanted a marriage blanket. And so I designed and created a marriage blanket based on their dotems, based on their ancestors. Back in the year 2000, I was artist in residence at a huge quilt show that went on for 20 days in Waterloo County. And I was, again, very honored and very humbled to create a giant teepee inside the curling facility there. And I invited Indigenous artists from across Canada to send in their quilts to line the inside of this massive teepee, and we showcased our collective works. And this is called Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights. Indigenous art, almost primitive look to it. And so this is a story of the west of the medicine wheel and the moon rising over the tree of peace, where war clubs have been broken and buried underneath the tree of peace, and grizzly bears guarding that tree of peace. And that so those war clubs will never be dug out and used by our people against our own people again. Here's the eastern part of the wheel, tree of peace. Just reversed it and put it on the other side of the quilt. And this is the rising sun. An eagle is the totem of the East, and it raises its wings in honor of the beginning of the day and childhood and the gloriousness of another day of breath and life. This next piece is called Star Mountain, and it's part of our stories and cultures that the stars are our ancestors. So this is why we celebrate solstice in the winter months. I've done this picture of this mountain as if a star was looking down from the heavens, seeing the peak of the mountain, sides of the mountain going away. This is my wedding dress. I think it cost me about $25 in materials to make. I did all the hand beading and beaded the decals. And if you remember the decal in the very first picture, this is one of the same decals I recreated for my wedding dress. And this is the scalp of a fox that's on the back. It's a drum that was painted to honor one of the senators who participated in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. One of the things I love to do is create jewelry in my studio here, and I love to do dolls. Dolls which are representative of age and dolls which are representative of color. My late in life surprise daughter, this is her birthing bag. This next submission is something that's not specifically Aboriginal, but a friend asked me to make a quilt representing his siblings. And he gave this to his mother, but she gets great joy out of seeing her children represented as animals. This is a star quilt. So stars are very important in Indigenous culture. Stars represent our ancestors, as I've already mentioned, but they're also, star quilts are done by the community of a young girl who's about to get her menstrual cycle. And so the quilt is made, and her first menstrual cycle is spent sequestered with the aunties and women of the community. So even when I was teaching in community college, I got this particular, I think it was a Cranston VIP print. It was a total panel because I found when I was teaching quilting, it was too much for students to have to piece and quilt. So I started them out with whole cloth quilt techniques. So they just had to get the stitching down and rocking that little number 12 needle to get their 10 or 12 stitches to the inch. Once I could get them comfortable with that, then we did the actual piecing of the stars. There's a program called Scarlet and Isaiah, and the producers asked me if they could bring Scarlet into my working studio here and teach her how to quilt. So, with the magic of television, we were able to do this chipmunk in a tree with leaves. And so that's a plaque representing thanks of that particular company. So I think that brings me to the end of my talk.